All right, hello. Another book review, as you can see. Yeah, The Burnout Society by Mr. Unpronounceable. I guess it's Byung-Chul Han or Han Byung-Chul. So I believe it's backwards, isn't it, in Korean? I've mentioned this guy before. I did a little video snippet of him, but I thought I'd give this book a proper review. And again, it's one of those that I have gone over it a little bit, but I do need to read it a bit more. Um, but I've got a decent perspective on it now, I think. And I will be reviewing his other book as well in the future. I'll tell you more about that later. Anyway, so I'm just going to go through each chapter bit by bit. In the English version, because I believe he's Korean, obviously he's in Korean, and I think probably the original copy is in German because he studied in Germany and he studied a lot of Heidegger, as I may have mentioned previously. Anyway, yeah, so he in the first chapter, which is called Neural Power, I believe, and this is kind of a look at society and how now it's not about physical activity and physical labor, it's more about neural power. And he's going on to something you see repeated throughout history. I think Aristotle mentions this, Plato mentions this, Hobbes, even Rousseau as well, sort of talking about society as a like being diseased or having an illness of some kind. And he's sort of going into like now we're entering the phase of we've got literal physical neural diseases going on, which is kind of true. And he's talking about things like um, ADHD and just basic stress, and obviously the title of the book, the Burnout Society, like people getting burnt out. In the second part, he goes into I think it's something along the lines of it after the disciplining, can I say that word? Discipline after discipline society. Let's not even try and say that. For some reason, my brain can't do those words sometimes. Um, and what he means by this is before we had, I guess it's kind of the idea of a kind of negative force within society, like the no, like don't do this, don't do that, saying no to things. And now it's kind of we've turned around into like the positive side of things, where it's like saying yes to everything, which is part and parcel of what his argument is, and it's something that I can get on board with. I do follow, which is the like achievement society, the achievement individual, as in we're always looking to do something else to achieve, to achieve, to achieve. As in someone talking to on the forums recently, going on about Schopenhauer, and there is a lot of connection between things Schopenhauer is saying and what Hans says as well. And I agree with it to an extent, let's say. So he kind of covers that in the next part, and then what comes next after that? It is profound boredom, which I will leave a link in the description for this. I did write a little bit on Substack. I've not had time to write anything on there lately, covering this guy and his take on boredom there. And yeah, basically, he's looking at boredom as a positive aspect, something we should embrace. The the sort of sum total of it basically gets into saying that it's relaxation for the brain. Sleep is rest for the body. Boredom is rest for the mind. That's a nice little aphorism to take away from this. Um, and in those things, within those first three chapters, I have the most contention, to be honest. There's a couple of things he mentions in here which I really kind of at odds with. And then comes the next section. I will go into that in more detail shortly. The next section is Viva Activa, which I believe is taken from, he's doing like a critical analysis of Hannah, I don't know how to say her name, Arendt, um, someone who wrote some political science or something about political philosophy in the, I think it's in the 1950s sometime. And he was just sort of saying that she kind of made the mistake in how she's formalized like modern society and why it's so stressed and full of problems. And his argument is that now it's the manual labor is more about intellectual labor. It's a we're actively contemplating things constantly all the time. Again, part of this achievement led society, the achievement individual. We're always trying to achieve, improve, improve, improve. As I've mentioned in a little essay I wrote, like now it's all about improving yourself, self-improvement, this kind of thing. There's no kind of end to this. There's no stop to it. The next section is the pedagogy of seeing, which I might have to look at my notes for this one, but I can't quite recall what goes in that one. It's a pretty good bit. Let me just check in brief. I'll be going back over these again later. Actually, I'll leave that one because I'm going to come into it a bit more. And after that is the Bartleby case, which is taken from, is it from Kafka or someone? It's like just focus on one character. And the bit I took away from that, and one of my own sort of little things that I latched onto with that was the point of responsibility within society and how people want to have freedom, but with freedom comes responsibility. And people, they don't want that responsibility. They don't want to be the ones held responsible for when things go wrong. They just want to point out what's wrong. That kind of attitude is what I attached to that part. It's only a little short section in between. Then he goes on to a society of tiredness. Again, taking a positive take on tiredness. I think he mentions like in the religious aspect of things, like traditionally we'd have, you know, the rest Sunday, the day of rest, and how these kind of little facets of everyday life have been like pushed out of us, where we're just, again, like I've said, it's the achievement society. Do more, don't waste a moment, don't waste a second. And it's this tick, 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 tick. It's this kind of activity which is going on, which is causing a lot of these problems in society as he sees it. And yeah, I can agree to a point to this, yeah. And then finally, the final section is the Burnout Society, where he just sort of hammers home his ideas a bit. Anyway, I'm going to have to look at the notes I got here for this. So bit by bit. So neural power, I don't think I had a lot to say about this. Or maybe I did. Oh, I've written here hermeneutic drivel. There is a bit of that because he goes on. It's just there's a better way. He's definitely, you can tell he studied Heidegger, because personally what I found with reading Being in Time was like, I read a whole chapter and then read the last paragraph and just say, well, why didn't you just say that at the start and save me reading all this mush? Because yeah, that at least this guy, it's a short piece of writing. All his books seem to be quite short and densely packed. So I think he's stepped it up several notches from Heidegger. Heidegger did not need to write that long a book to say something so goddamn simple. Well, I won't say simple, but there was no need for it in my book. Anyway, get that rant out the way. That's my opinion anyway. I know many people love Heidegger. I love to hate him and I hate to love him kind of thing. It's one of those. Anyway. Yeah, so I put here, yeah, it just means like, yeah, get rid of something bad, yeah, negate the negation, because he's talking about this negativity, negating the negativity of the negative, and it's like, surely is an easy way to say that. And yeah, looking at, yeah, this is where he's gone about like the immunological prophylaxis, that is inoculation, follows the dialectic of negativity. Fragments of the other are introduced into the own in order to provoke immuno reaction. Thereby, negation of negation occurs without the danger of death, because immune system. It's basically just saying, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's a simpler way of putting what he's saying here to a degree. So it's kind of like fortifying yourself against certain problems. And the more complex idea within this, it's kind of instead of it's really hard to get your head around this one, and quite hard for me to get my head around it and well explain it. I know what I mean, but let me have a go. So it's kind of like we were driven previously to compete with each other, whereas now we are competing with ourselves, which is a strange kind of idea. So it's this kind of like it's like excessive individualization in a way, individualism, not individualization, individualism, as I may have mentioned many times before in the past about Popper. So it's this kind of idea that we're fighting against ourselves, and so we can never sort of defeat ourselves, and we're stuck in this really strange cycle. Let me just, what have I written here? Oh yeah, there's one that he's put. There's a really nice little one here. Yeah, harm does not come from negativity alone, just reading directly from it, but also from positivity, not just from the other of the foreign, but also from the same. Such violence of positivity can clearly be blah 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 blah. Yeah, he who lives by the same shall die by the same. This is from Bud, I don't know how to say it, Burilad. Likewise, Burroughs speaks of obesity of all current systems. Yeah, of information, communication, and production. Fat does not provoke an immune reaction. I really like that bit. That is that's Hans one. Yeah, fat does not provoke an immune reaction. Yeah, so it's kind of like there's this glut of positivity we have. We're taking in everything, and we can, and there's no reaction against ourselves in this way. We can't attack our fat. There's no immunological response to this. It's a really strange metaphor. Yeah, so it doesn't lead to antibodies. Again, he's talking about it in a metaphorical sense here in terms of neurologically and how we're looking at the world. Yeah, so the neural power. What else we got here? Yeah, there's the lack of. Yeah, what I put here is his main argument in this part is the lack of otherness. It's kind of like there's nothing that we're kind of fighting against. I just keep saying the same thing here, don't I? It's a really strange idea, but it's nice. Yeah, we become passive, not having to combat anything, and there's an excess of positivity. So yeah, we've negated our negation, and we're just constantly positive. We can't say no to anything, which is the point of the next chapter, Beyond Disciplinary Society. Whereas we're not disciplined enough to say, no, I'm not going to do that. We're just constantly feed. We're inundated. It's this kind of idea that's getting across. And I've put in my notes here, yes, inhibition versus openness. Yeah, so we're open to so much, but at the same time, we're lacking the function to inhibit ourselves. We are inundated. We're just fattened up with all these positive possibilities. And because it's fat in his analogy, we're not able to, our bodies, and in this metaphor, we can't fight against it. There's no natural reaction, so we're just going to drop dead one day. And again, this is the burnout point. Yeah, I've put in there. Yeah, the language used is like muted bombast. It is a little bit like that in places. Yeah, obedient subjects, achievement subjects. So this is where he first brings in the term, I think. Yeah, achievement subjects. And just from the end of the previous chapter, sort of saying, yeah, depression, ADHD, burnout syndrome point to excess positivity. So there's too much positivity. The hyper and hyperactivity is not an immunological category. It represents the massification of the positive, as in the fat. It's a really, his language is a bit much sometimes, and this is a translation, so maybe it's the best it could do. Yeah, disciplinary society is still governed by no. It's negatively produces madmen and criminals. In contrast, achievement society creates depressives and losers. Nice, nice, nice. So, sort of saying here, um, yeah, achievement society. It's because people cannot achieve. You can't ever reach that point. Everyone's just sort of, everyone's losing. Everyone's depressed. Whereas in disciplinary society, saying you can't do something, it makes the ones able break through in a way. I think there's a bit of a Nietzsche thing going on here as well. The positivity of can is much more effective than the negativity of should. Therefore, the social unconscious switches from should to can. Yeah, so yeah, it's easier. It's easier to look at what you can do and do that than look at what you should do in a way. Yeah, can does not revoke the should. So it's this kind of it's this point where I would sort of put in my own sort of shoehorn in my own idea. I think this is what he's saying in a way. It's like this lack of responsibility. People are not we're not willing to do the hard things. We want to avoid the suffering, so to speak. Wink, wink. If you're watching, you know who you are. What else is there here? Let's just skip ahead, or it might go on for too long. Yeah, so the achievement subject is the main point here. Yeah, the achievement individual. Yeah, and I've put here, there's some kind of reference, again, back to, my own kind of views in a way. Yeah, Harker. He doesn't mention Popper himself, but there's a certain thing there. There's compulsive freedom, free of constraint of maximizing achievement. Again, I put here, I disagree. The freedom brings the burden of responsibility. I think this for me is the main problem. I am disagreeing with bits of him in a way. Yeah, I put freedom scares people. That's what I think. But anyway. Yeah, and he's mostly talking against the perspective of one guy in this part, I believe. What's his name? It's Ehrenberg. Ehrenberg. I'm not sure who he is. Maybe you're more in the know than me there. So it's not. He's kind of sometimes it's easy to sort of think he's saying one thing, but he's just sort of repeating what the other guys are saying. Guys or gals in this case. Anyway, on to profound boredom. To be honest, you can go and look at the Substack about that if you're interested. I can give you a very brief. Well, I already did mention it before. And he goes into Walter Benjamin here and quotes him a bit. Someone I'd like to read in the future. I believe he might mention. No, he doesn't. Not yet. And at the end of this, he sort of mentions Nietzsche a bit. What's this from? Oh yeah, I think this is pulled straight from Nietzsche. This is how he finishes this chapter on profound boredom. From lack of repose of civilization is turning into new barbarism. At no time have the active, that is to say, the restless, counted for more. That is why one of the most necessary corrections to the character of mankind that have to be taken in hand is a considerable strengthening of contemplative element in it. Yeah, that's Nietzsche he's quoting there. I think that's from More Human Than Human, maybe, I believe. Anyway, on to Viva Activa. And this is where he's going at the gal, Hannah Arendt, however you say that. Yeah, and here we're going into ideas like the bare life, life of fleetingness, arrested by short bursts of focused ego directionless, and stressful searchingness. That's my note here, kind of just sort of going on what he's going on about. And there's lots of extremely obtuse terms using here. And the basic sum of this is he's got hyperactivity, hyperneurotic, um, not passive, but burdened with stress. The labor is mental, not physical. Yeah, so it's this idea of, has my chair gone down? It has, yes, it has, because I was eating. Yeah, I've put here, I'm not sure if this is true. I'm just reading my notes here. Yeah. Arden sees humanity, consciousness at least, as immediately heroic, but then moving into something akin to apathetic boredom, as Han translates. Yeah, that's what he seems to be saying here. What else? Overarching idea here is something like viewing urbanized humans as becoming reversed into animalistic drives. This kind of follows on from Han's point of view of human sensory overload forcing us to spread conscious attention and lose focus, heroic focus maybe. Yeah, but yeah, he was, again, I don't sort of buy into this idea of us. It's just a really strange one because it's kind of like saying that we're reverting to animals in a way, because animals are always alert, they're always focused, ready, like looking at some kind of, under prey basically, and we've kind of turned back into that where we're constantly stressed, anxious, looking out for what's going around. We're focused on our surroundings. But I don't know, it's a weird kind of point. Again, there's a few things that he does saying here which are just blind opinion. There's no kind of, he's not backing up with any kind of any evidence or even any explanation. He just sort of says, oh, this is a fact, or this is the way it is. And it's like, well, is it? Just because you say it is? I don't think so, somehow. I'll probably come across that in a bit. Yeah, now it's going to Expendable Life, talking about, what's his name? He mentioned somebody, Giorgio Agamben. Again, a name I've seen hanging around here, and well, I'm not familiar with who he is properly. Some echoes of Marxism and alienation in here. Yes, is prisoner guard, victim, blah, blah, blah. Is there anything else here worth mentioning? I'll just read out what I've got in my notes here, give you some idea of what's going on. So the physiological evolution of humans has left us as bizarre creatures who feel extended physiological effects that surface as trauma, burdening us with fears and pains by sheer force of will. And thinking is the new physical labor. Yeah, this is like straight from what Han was saying. This world forces attention more than action. The refuge from mental action is squandered in cheap entertainment rather than physical work or other meditative forms of relaxation. Again, that's more sort of my thoughts in there as well. But yeah, he's sort of saying about, yeah, it's the mental labor is the thing of today. And again, this is a bit where, is this really true? Has humanity and society basically been undergoing just pure physical labor constantly, and it's only recently it's become more mental labor? I'm not really sure what to take away from that. I don't think it's really true in a way. It's quite hard to gauge. I can see it superficially, like on the surface, you can sort of see, oh yeah, it makes sense. But when you really think about it and what's going on, like neurologically, I don't know, because again, people who be working a lot and not eating much, and like in the past, their cognitive strain on them will be very, very high because of lack of nutrition and such. So it's like we've had a cognitive explosion. Maybe this is the excess of positivity as well. So maybe there is a point there. Just we're now within like the modern world, modern society, within the last like 50, 60, 70, whatever years, we've really started to move it up a good number of levels in terms of cognitive capacities which are being applied to the world. So Yeah, there is that. Again, we have to argue for and against these things. And how does he finish this one off? Completive action of merge for humans due to the power of human brain. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so cognitive power for physical strength. That's his kind of argument at the end of that section. The pedagogy of seeing. Now. Yeah, and he goes into viva or vita contemplativa rather than what we were talking about before. And he mentions a Twilight of the Idols here in Nietzsche. One needs to learn not to see. No, one needs to learn to see, to think, and to speak and write. The goal of education, according to Nietzsche, is noble culture. Learning to see means, quoting, get your eyes used to calm, to patience, to letting things come to you. Yeah, Nietzsche's always fairly nice. Oh, I've put a note here. I must have missed this before when I was looking. I put dense material. What? No rest? Yeah, I didn't understand this. So I'll read this out, see if you understand. Oh no, it's going to be no. It's too thick. They just sort of mentioning here pedagogy seeing modern world's full of distractions. It's kind of the obvious things. An example of prolonged activity lacking any intellectual action. We pause for intellect to contemplate. That's my notes. Not sure what I'm talking about here. So anyway, different actions and different activity exists. Activity that follows an unthinking mechanical course is a poor interruption. Machines cannot pause, despite its enormous capacity for calculation. The computer is stupid insofar as it lacks the ability to delay. Yes, and that's where we have the bonus, but we are kind of turning ourselves into computers in a way. Well, we were the first computers. Yeah, acceleration is abolishing all intervals. So there's no sort of pause. There's no refuge from the constant strain we're under. The achievement subject, as he calls it. And where does he go on to next? Yeah, this offers and services in rage, he says. Rage is a capacity to interrupt. Oh, yeah, so this can stop us. Interrupt a given state and make a new state begin. Today it is yielding more and more to offense or annoyance. Having a beef, which proves incapable of affecting decisive change. Yeah, so we kind of need to have this pushback in a way. What's he going on about at the end here? Yeah, this is a bit of a long one, this. My God, it is a bit of a long one. Mentioning Nietzsche's here, and again, the power to say no, which is an important point throughout this, runs right through it. Then there's the Bartleby case. Oh, it's from Merville's Bartleby. Not Kafka at all. Yeah, there's not much to say about this. Because I don't know what he's talking about there. So I'm not going to go into it too much. And then we're on to the Society of Tiredness. Life viewed as mere function, effectively making life defunct. And he's sort of saying how we're moving into a kind of a doping society. We're wanting to treat ourselves in certain ways, the pharmaceutical way, which I'm not a fan of, to say the least. Yeah, positive look at tiredness. Deep tiredness rises to become a form of salvation, a form of rejuvenation. It brings back a sense of wonder to the world. And he's quoting someone here. Yeah, the tired Odysseus won the love of, I can't say that word, Nausicaa. Tiredness makes you younger than you have ever been. Everything becomes extraordinary in the tranquility of tiredness. Yeah. I don't think he's talking about sleep deprivation here, but if you've ever done that kind of thing where you stayed up all night and you get that kind of weird phase where you get this kind of second wind and you've got this sort of clarity of thought and way of looking at things. That does seem rejuvenating. I don't think that's what he's talking about at all there. But you got that when your mind's at rest in a way, basically, similar to boredom. He does mention one of my favorites here. Well, actually, he doesn't. He just sort of mentions Does he actually mention him? Yes, this is where he's talking about the Sabbath, the stopping, and the point of tiredness and being tired, having a day of just rest, doing nothing, the importance of having an interval. And he's got here, what's it? And that is the day of, oh yeah, the seventh holy day. That is the day of, in order to is not sacred, but rather the day of not to. Yeah, the day of do, sweet F-all. A day on which the use of useless proves possible. That's one, when he's being a bit obscure with his wording here, I do like that. The use of the useless. It is a day of tiredness. The interval is a time without work, a time of and for play. Again, that's where I think Schiller. Cha-ching! It draws a difference from Heidegger's definition of time, which is essentially a matter of care and work. Yeah, the interval in between times is a period of indifference as friendliness. Yeah, I do think there's a lot going on there with Schiller and his idea of time. It's like we have excess. You're using that excess energy. And into the last section. I've not got a single note on the first few pages. Always mentioning Kafka. Touches on Freud, Kant. Then what do we get to? Prohibitions. Yeah, reducing prohibitions and heightening liberty reduces negativity, so as to play into achievement society. Yeah, so it's this kind of pushback against liberty in a way. It's like the freedom, if it's like uninhibited freedom, it's like we're not mature enough as a society to take on this kind of freedom in a way, because we're like, oh, all right, it's like letting a kid into a sweet shop. They just take everything they can, and they just fatten themselves up, and then they're not capable of much. Whereas if you just had this kind of self-restraint, if we learned that, this kind of negativity, which I think is what trying to get at more than anything, being able to condense things down, bring ourselves into the moment more, forget about competing. And this is a very kind of Western attitude, this whole competition thing. A very American attitude, I would say. And it's interesting to see it being expressed here by someone from South Korea. I'm not sure. I think he moved to Germany probably in his 20s, I expect, something like that. Yeah, what's this bit? A character contains a history of repression within itself. It represents blah, 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 the ego and id. Also, it's going about Freud again still. One might generalized observation declare that the late modern ego has no character. Carl Smith says it is a sign of inner conflict to have more than one real enemy. Nice. The same holds for friends. Following Smith, having more than one friend would betoken a lack of character and definition. My God, some of these people, things they come out with. I kind of get the idea, though. I've put here, how does this relate to Berlin's two concepts of liberty? Again, I was trying to sort of think about this whole negativity, positive thing, just because they're the same words, really. See if there's anything in it. Something I need to look at. And what I've got here is he's quoting, again, Ehrenberg. And I've put as an answer to this, like, yeah, need for Jungian individuation, in my opinion. Personal positive improvements or self-contemplation. Yeah. So, yeah, self-contemplation's probably a better idea. And it's an interesting one here. I just read this section out. It is important to distinguish depression from melancholy. Melancholy is preceded by the experience of loss. Therefore, it still stands in a relation, namely negative relation to the absent thing or party. In contrast, depression is cut off from all relation and attachment. It utterly lacks gravity. Maybe something there. Mm-hmm. It's again, it's kind of a. He does make sort of statements like, "Oh, this is," it's sort of saying it like, "This is the way it is. This is the truth." But it's an interesting thought anyway. He does go on further, much further than that. Yeah, excess equality. Kind of excess equality is similar to excess positivity. That's kind of my notes on this here, in a way. So society, I've written here, society lacks resistance to or resistance for the individual in any concrete sense. The freedom given is paid for in a ubiquitous existence that lacks vitality. The struggle of life becomes a struggle against self, for self, and wears the self down. And yes, it's kind of a relation to what Schopenhauer says about, you know, the horn players in society, that kind of thing. But yeah, I do. Yeah, it's the struggle against the self rather than because yeah, in society things have become ubiquitous. This is what I mean by like the equality. That was my quote, like excess equality, excess positivity. I don't mean equality like, you know, in the sense that people here use today. Just that there's more freedom for everyone. There's more. Everyone's got kind of the same thing. It doesn't seem worth. You're not really competing against each other, so you start struggling against yourself. And again, I'm just kind of interpreting what he's saying and taking my take on it there. But these are the kind of things he gets into. What else have we got now? Devoid of decisions of force or power by removal of obstacles, maybe, question mark. Oh, no, I've not really decided there, have I? Yeah, I've put here, the burnout is the stress of continual change. Industrial society gave us a constant sense of self through lack of dynamic change in mechanical society. Interesting idea, but dubious too. I'm not sure if that's my idea or their idea, but yes, a dubious idea. It's an idea, nevertheless. And here, yeah, going back to the whole equality thing is mentioned on the next page. So it's kind of like in agreement with you here to a degree. Conflict no longer offers a sure guide. Yeah, I agree with the gist of this idea of it. Yeah, so yeah, it's like saying the conflict is it's an internal conflict. It's not with anything out there in the world, which is this kind of you're wearing yourself away. And yeah, he's quoting wariness from Ehrenberg. This is Ehrenberg's words. So deficit filled, apathy stimulated, impulses regulated, compulsion tamed. All of this has made dependency the flip side of depression, with the gospel of personal development on the one hand and the cult, I liked it, the cult of performance on the other. Conflict does not disappear. However, it loses its obvious quality and can no longer be counted on to guide us. Yeah, I think that the deconflictualization that Einberg connects with depression. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, de-ideologicalization. That's a mouthful of a word. And what does Han go on to say here? Oh, this is it. This is where I've written it. Is this at all true? Huh? Is what facts. So struggle no longer occurs between groups, ideologies, or classes, but between individuals. Still, this fact is not as important for understanding as a crisis of achievement as, again, is he... I'm not sure what he's talking about here. I need to go back and read through this again. Is he sort of just saying what he thinks Ehrenberg is saying, or is it what he thinks? Because it seems, I put, yes, yeah, interesting idea in terms of thinking about open versus closed society. Yeah, going back to my old poppery thing there. And he goes on to say, yeah, that is the achievement subject competes with itself. It succumbs to the destructive compulsion to outdo itself over and over, to jump over its own shadow. This self-constraint, which poses as freedom, has deadly results. Yeah, so it's this, you're grinding away at yourself. But where he gets the fact between individuals, I'm not sure about that. Anyway, yeah, in transition from disciplinary society to achievement society, the superego positivizes itself as the ego ideal. The superego is repressive. Above all, it prohibits. It rules over the ego with the harshness and cruelty of the dictatorial thou shalt, and its harshly restraining, cruelly prohibiting quality. Yeah, he's pulling from a bit of Freud there. Well, that was his words. What else we got here? Unfettered psychological freedom. All political and religious bonds have loosened. That's my notes. But yeah, the late modern achievement subject is subject to no one. Yeah, we're kind of, again, it's this excess freedom in a way as well. We kind of got this unbound, crazy freedom going on. Excuse me, sorry. I will tie this up soon. He mentions, I put here, yeah, psychobabble mostly, yeah, a bit of psychobabble at the end. Ironically reads like a self-help book in terms of evidence and causation. Yeah, that was my point. He's gone about all these self-help books, and yeah, it does read a bit like that. The achievement society is a society of self-exploration. The achievement subject exploits itself until it burns out. In the process, it develops auto-aggression that often enough escalates into the violence of self-destruction. The project turns out to be a projectile that the achievement subject is aiming at itself. Yeah, it does sound like something from a self-help book. And it's something I do need to go back and reread over for this, where he goes on about the homo sacer, the sacrificed human or the sacred human, which is a more complex idea. And yeah, the sacrilegious idea. There's some bit towards the end I don't quite understand. He mentions Habermas as well a little bit. And what else we got going on? Oh yeah, he gives a quote of Aristotle, which is really nice. And he let me just look. This is back in the footnotes somewhere. There is a nice bit. There's a couple of really nice footnotes in here. Where is it? Yeah, so this is in the footnotes. And this is directly from Aristotle. I've just written brilliant Exodus because it is. The reason they are so depotent. So some people believe that this is a risk. This is a task of household management to go on thinking that they should maintain their store of money or increase it without limit. The reason they are so disposed, however, is that they are preoccupied with living, not with living well. And since their appetite for life is unlimited, they also want an unlimited amount of what sustains it. Yeah, so they're not, it's kind of, yes, saving for a rainy day too much. And is there anything more to mention here? No, that's about it. He just sort of finishes it off with saying something along the lines of, yeah, the inner logic of achievement society dictates its evolution into a doping society. And he's emphasized the doping society. Life reduced to bare, vital functioning is life to be kept healthy unconditionally. Health is the new goddess. Some reference to Nietzsche here as well. That is why bare life is holy. And the homines sacri of achievement society also differ from those of the society of sovereignty on another score. They cannot be killed at all. Their life equals that of the undead. They are too alive to die and too dead to live. And that's how he finishes it. Bit-a-bum-ch. Or it should be a dun-dun-dun, not a bit-a-bum-ch. Anyway, yeah. That is that. That is that. Very, very long one. And I do need to go back and look into this one myself. It's a nice kind of go between. If you're someone who doesn't like Heidegger and that kind of thought, this might make you want to read Heidegger a bit more. I'll put it like that. He's studied Heidegger intensely, this guy. But it is nice. Another book. Anyway, let me just sort of mention very briefly what books am I going to go over. Oh, sorry. What books am I going to go over in the future? I've got Religions of the Silk Road, which looks kind of interesting. I've got Mythologies by Barthas. Probably a while before I get to that, to be honest. And yeah, this one, which is much better in my opinion. This is more up my street than the other one, than the Burnout Society. It's nice, and I've got a few other of his books which I want to get into, especially because where I live in the world, he's talking about religion in Asia. Is it South Asia, Southeast Asia, or something? He goes on something about Zen as well, which should be an interesting dig into. Something else that I do probably want to go into, but I'm more sort of studying this quite extensively at the moment. The First Philosophers, I'm going over that. But anyway, yeah, a lot of stuff there. Trying to think of anything more to say. Probably not. Yeah, check out the Substack thing if you want to read what I wrote about the whole profound boredom bit. And that's it. Yeah, bye-bye.